Welcome to Rise Up Namibia. So in this video, we're gonna be looking at the difference between squares by Matt Yanata, aka the resistor of bad and the lover of good. Hashtag dark and lovely _ walk by faith and not by sight. So example number 1. So what do you do when you get a question like this? So the first thing I would like us to look at, let me just rewrite this, is the sign in between the two terms. You gotta make sure that you have two terms and that the sign in between them is like a minus sign, okay? Make sure that you have a minus sign in between your two terms. And then number 2 is the exponent or index. Make sure that they are all even numbers. For example, in these two terms, we have one exponent, which is 2, and it's an even number. What are even numbers? Even numbers are numbers like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and the list goes on. Okay? Number 3, make sure that the two terms are square numbers. Okay? So from number 3, what do? We start looking for our answer. Now, where do we start when we are looking for our answer? Find the square root of the two terms separately. Okay? So let's try doing that with our question. So we find the square root of the first term, which is x squared. So what is the square root of x squared? Now mind you, when we write our answer when we are factorizing, we write it in 2 brackets. Okay? 2 close brackets. So the square root of x squared is x. Now we write 1x in this first bracket and we write the other x in the second bracket. Okay? Now when we square root, okay, don't forget that in one bracket we write a positive sign and in the other bracket we write a negative sign. Always. Okay? Now when we square root 64 separately, what do we get? We get a 8. So we write 1/8 in the first bracket and we write the other 8 in the next bracket. And just like that, you have found your final answer. So when you multiply these brackets out, they should be able to give you x squared minus 64. Okay? Let's look at another example. So example number 2. So now you have d to the power of 4 minus 1. Okay? Let's look at our sign. Is it a minus sign in between the two terms? Yes. The exponents, are they even numbers? We only have one exponent and it's a 4. 2, 4, yes, it's an even number. Are the two terms square numbers? Yes. D to the power of 4 is a square number. Is 1 a square number? Yes. 1 is a perfect square, so it's a square number. Okay, so let's find square roots of the two terms separately. Okay, so let's just rewrite it. And then we write down our 2 closed brackets. And then we start with the first term. What's the square root of the first term? Now remember, when it's an exponent, when you find its square root, it's like you are dividing it by 2. Okay, it's like this 4, you'll be dividing it by 2. So when you say 4 divided by 2, what does it give you? It gives you a d to the power 2. Okay, now whatever you write in this bracket or closed bracket, you also write in the other closed bracket. Good. Now don't forget that in one bracket you write a positive sign, in another bracket you write a negative sign. Okay, now what about when you look for the square root of 1? What's the answer? It's just 1. Okay, now take a look at this. You leave the positive, the answer, because you now have your 2 closed bracket, you ignore the one with the positive sign. You look at the one with the negative sign. When you look at the 2 parts or the 2 terms, is there still square numbers? Yes. when you look at d squared is a square number, okay? And the 1 is also a square number, but focus more on the d squared. So what do? We bring this first part of the answer down just the way it is, the one with a positive sign. Because remember, when we are dealing with difference between two squares, we don't mind about the positive sign, okay? Sorry. Now, we treat this d to the power 2 minus 1 just the same way as we treated this one, okay? So we factor it again. So we bring out our two brackets, and then we find the square root of d to the power 2. What is the square root of d to the power 2? It's just d. Remember I said when you look for the square root of a exponent, like of a letter, you just like divide it by 2. What's 2 divided by 2 is 1, okay? So which means the answer is just d. So you write the d there, and like you write it in one bracket, you also write it in the other closed bracket, okay? And then you write the positive sign in one bracket, and you write a negative sign in the other bracket. And then you like look for the square root of this one. It's just 1, so you bring 1, 1, 1, if that makes sense, like in one bracket and the other one in the other bracket, okay? And just like that, you have found your answer. But before you come to conclusions that you have found your answer, you should always look at the bracket with a negative or a minus sign. Is there still square numbers? Now when we look at this case, here there is only a d and a 1, which means there is no more square numbers like when we were here. When we were here, there were square numbers of d to the power 2 and 1. But when we are here, okay, 1 is a square number, but this d is not a square number, so it can no more factor. This could still factor when we are here, but when you come here, it can no more factor, which means this is your whole answer, okay? So when you like multiply out these brackets, you should be able to get the same answer as your question. That was d to the power 4 minus 1. Good. Let's look at this example, number 3. So let's look at number 1. Is the minus sign in between the two terms? Yes. What about the exponents? Here we have a to the power 2 and b to the power 2. Okay, both 2 are even numbers, okay? Let's look at number 3. The two terms are square numbers. Let's look at let's take a close look at 3 and 75. Are they square numbers? No, they are not square numbers. So this is where we look at the common factors. Look for common factors between the two. What is the common factor between 3 and 75? Because remember, when you try looking for like the square root of 3, you get like a number that is a decimal number. Even when you look for square root of 75, you get a decimal number. So that tells us that they are not square numbers. So we look for their common factor. What's the common factor between 3 and 75? The common factor, or let me say the highest common factor, is 3. Okay? Now, 3 being, okay, here I just rewrote the question. So, if 3 is the highest common factor, and then we divide our question by the highest common factor, which is 3. So we say 3 divided by 3 gives us 1, okay? Which will be a squared. Remember, we don't write ones. So what is 75 or negative 75 divided by 3? It gives us, sorry, 25b squared. Like it gives us a negative 25b squared. So what do we do from here? Let's go back to our rules. Is the minus sign between this? Yes, there's a minus sign. The exponents, are they still even? Yes, they are still even. Now look at number 3. The two terms, are they square numbers? Now look, when we factored out the 3 and the 75, when we factor it out, we get square numbers. Now these are square numbers. So if they are square numbers, we can factor by difference between squares. Okay, so what do we do from here? Bring down the 3 that you used to factor the 3 and the 75 out, and then you bring out your two closed brackets. So what do you do now? Now you find the square root of the two terms separately. So what is the square root of a squared? It's a. Now when you write one a in one closed bracket, you also write the a in the other closed bracket. Okay? So don't forget that in one bracket you write a positive sign, and then in the other bracket you write a minus sign. Okay? And then you look for the square root of 25. Now notice that when you look for the square root of 25, next to the 25 is a b squared, which is also a what? A square number. Now when you square 25, you get 5. But when you square b squared, you get a b. So it will be 5b. Now when you write it on this side, you also write it on the other side. Okay? And just like that, you have found your answer. So this is your answer for example number 3. And the 3 is also involved in the answer. So don't forget to write the 3 like on the side. Okay? So here I've given you some test questions. Feel free to pause the video and try them out to see if you can get the right answer. Okay, so here are the answers. So if you have any questions, feel free to hit them down below in the comment section. Thank you all for watching. Please do like, subscribe, turn on that notification button to be the first to see the next upload. Share with friends, family, and classmates. And remember, together we rise to higher heights. Apart, we all stay behind. Cheers.